Oh, should we do like a little so you guys can say hi and howdy again?
I'm cool with that.
It's me, Rob. Still here.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Is that Mickey? Is it you?
Oh my god!
Mickey's here. Mickey came to talk about Brer
That's
Rabbit
so-
and how he's not racist.
Thank you, Mickey. I was
Thanks,
happy
Mickey.
to have you here, buddy. Welcome to Strange Ride, where I tell the smartest man I know the weirdest things I know. My name is Savannah Barrett, and I will be your guide today, but you're not the only ones going on this ride. I have once again with me Andrew Mims.
Salutations, everybody.
And then, of course, we have the smartest man we know. I know, Rob C. Thompson of Occult Confessions fame.
Can you just talk quieter because I'm trying to picture myself on Splash Mountain Splash Edition?
What are you seeing right now?
It's glorious. I'm seeing a lot of Tom Hanks.
Was he one of the main characters? I'm assuming he was
yes,
helping.
he's the guy. It's a romantic comedy. He's falls in
Oh.
love with the human who can turn into a mermaid.
Aw.
Or the mermaid that turns into a human.
And he's got to
either way.
protect her from people finding out she's a mermaid.
From water, mostly, yeah.
That's going to be really hard to do on a long swim ride, Tom. Watch out!
No, the tension. The drama.
Well, wait until I have a story for you guys that I think you're absolutely going to love, and I can't wait to get to it. But before we get there, we must start at the very beginning of the final day of operation of Walt Disney World Splash Mountain. Splash Mountain in Disneyland was still open until May, at the end of May, but this was the true day that signified the fact that it was actually happening. Splash Mountain would be gone forever and changed into Tiana's Bayou Adventure. The day was January 22nd, 2023. I remember waking up that day and instantly hopping on my Disney World app to see the wait time for the ride. I checked at 11 a.m. and the ride already had a 175-minute wait.
Jeez.
Yes. I remember that day personally, I was so excited for that day, and literally, I kept checking my Disney World app to see the wait time, but I remember I was, at work or something all day, so I wasn't in Florida when this was happening. Every time I got on Twitter, it was, a new video of something just, berserk happening, something just very strange. It was a very eventful day in the Magic Kingdom, it seemed like, or at least the crowds were just, unreal. Because I wasn't there, I watched 2 different videos of the final day of Splash Mountain, the Daily Woos and Theme Park Expresses, and both offered unique views of the days from start to finish. So the park opened technically at 9 a.m. that day, but Disney allows guests to enter the parks early in order to get in line for a rope drop. So people entered the Magic Kingdom up to an hour early in order to wait at the different lands once the park actually opened. So you could get scanned into the park, but you just couldn't leave the main hub and Main Street USA until 9 a.m. when the park actually officially opened. And if you remember from our Epcot episode, the park is set in a radial design with the castle being at the center, and then there are different lands that branch off of it. On this particular day, instead of all the lands having a relatively balanced line, almost everyone who was there at that time was waiting to either enter through Liberty Square or Adventureland, which are both straight shots back to Splash Mountain, which is in the farthest back corner of the Magic Kingdom. As soon as it turned 9 a.m., the rope was dropped and a literal horde of people, it had to be hundreds of people, started running towards Splash Mountain, which is honestly a hike from the Castle Hub. And in the video, you can hear cast members screaming, "No running!" over and over again, but it doesn't seem to help very much. It's honestly kind of terrifying watching it from these video perspectives because there's so many people and people are moving between each other and pushing and speed walking, so they're not technically running. It could have very easily turned into a situation where somebody got trampled. It was kind of terrifying.
I'm imagining a Black Friday horror story.
Yeah, that's essentially what it was like. And all these people are running to be the first people in line to ride Splash Mountain that day. The queue fills up so quickly that they have to create a makeshift extended queue that goes outside of the already designated line for Splash Mountain. And they have to have a cast member with a sign that says, "This is the end of the line," constantly moving backwards. The line ends up stretching up over the Splash Mountain Bridge and all the way back into Frontierland at the entrance of the Country Bear Jamboree, which still exists in Disney World.
Nice.
As it should.
Yeah. Oh, but they did announce that they're updating it. So they're not getting rid of the Country Bear Jamboree, but they're changing the songs so that the Country Bears are going to be singing like Disney classic songs, like Little Mermaid songs and
Oh,
stuff like that.
boo.
He's a Country Bear purist.
Well, not a. But it kills the immersion, man.
Like if it's like countrified versions of it,
I
then
think
I
it
can get down with it.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure it is. Like I think they announced or released a version of one of the songs, but I can't remember what it was because I didn't watch it. But sorry. I know that was
Bare
weird.
necessities.
Honestly,
That would be a
that
good
would be a
one.
shock if they didn't have the one on there. But yeah, so this is really far back considering that like the Splash Mountain queue is like the farthest thing back in that corner. For it to stretch all the way back into like the middle of Frontierland, that's a huge, that's a lot of people. Um, and from that moment on, the logs started splashing and they didn't stop until the ride was closed forever. The wait times fluctuated throughout the day, but at one point around 2 p.m., it reached a 220-minute wait, and it never dropped below an hour and a half that day. As soon as you were off the ride, you would exit through the gift shop where they had to make yet another extended queue line, this time made out of tape. And what was the line for? It was to the penny pressing machine. The line literally wrapped around the entire gift shop, and people seemed to wait at least a half an hour, if not more, in order to get a pressed penny with these characters on it. No matter where you went around the Briar Patch that day, there was always going to be just a huge swarm of people. People came dressed in Disney bounds, which, in case you're not aware, so Disney bounding is essentially like a very, very light form of cosplay. Because, of course, people like Disney fans, they want to dress up as some of their favorite characters when they go to the Disney parks. But part of the staple of going to the Disney parks is meeting your favorite characters dressed up in costume. So Disney doesn't allow adults to wear costumes, but adults have found a way around it where they call it Disney bounding, where it's essentially just a super, it's cosplay but in normal people clothes, so you are obviously not the character that,
So like closet cosplay.
yeah, exactly. So I saw a bunch of people dressed up like as Brer Rabbit, Brer Fox, and Brer Bear and stuff like that, and different families were wearing custom made t-shirts that said like it's time for the last splash. Someone was even wearing a suit and walking around with a rose because they were there attending Splash Mountain's funeral.
I respect that.
Others brought their plushies to ride the ride with them one last time. And watching the video, it honestly just seems like a convention of Splash Mountain lovers got together one last time in order to enjoy this ride that they grew up with. And you know what? I can't fault them. The videos that I saw were actually very sweet. It was just a bunch of people reminiscing about all the wonderful memories that they had on the ride. And I have to say that it truly was something special. I mean, I even have very specific memories from my childhood of riding Splash Mountain with my dad, and my dad and I have like nothing in common. So it's nice to have nicer memories like that with like something that we both enjoyed. And absolutely nothing beats like that feeling of going up the lift hill and seeing the castle in the distance before plummeting 50 feet below. It truly is a groundbreaking special ride, and I'm at least thankful that the track ride is staying the same because that is one of the most special parts about it. One of my favorite memories from Splash Mountain is riding it super late at night, right before the park was about to close and there was no line. So my cousins, my sister, and I all rushed to ride. And we did. And as we got back around to the loading dock to get off of the ride, we just started chanting, like, "Let's go again, let's go again." And the cast member just smiled at us and our log flew right through the loading station and didn't even stop. And we went on the ride again. And then
That's
our
cool.
parents
That's
were
rad.
pissed at us because the ride is like 15 minutes long. So instead of us being gone for 15 minutes, we were gone for a half an hour. And they were, once we got off the ride, they were like, "Where the hell were you?" And we were like, "We were just riding the ride again." But that was fun. But yeah, so the ride definitely holds like a special place in many people's hearts. And there were, of course, Save Splash Mountainers there, such as the Funeral Man. And then there were a couple of other super fans that like they were talked to by the like YouTuber that I watched throughout the video, and you could see that they had some pretty sour attitudes. But for the most part, it seems like the energy in the day from that day in the crowds was just a lovely one. Just a bunch of fans getting together to enjoy something one last time. But it was also vlog city. Like you couldn't go anywhere without being on camera that day. Because there were just so many people recording themselves enjoying or trying to enjoy their last splash. As it got later in the day is when things started to take a little bit of a turn for the worse. The New York Times released an article about Splash Mountain closing, and it helped me find a tweet that I had been looking for since I started researching this topic. I remembered reading on Twitter that day about someone who had started to make a memorial for Splash Mountain on the bridge right in front of the ride out of a bunch of different plushies of the characters. So the picture is like it literally looks like a memorial. Like somebody was set like a bunch of people came together and set their plushies down and left them there in order to like memorialize the ride. The New York Times somehow managed to find this picture and linked it for me, and I was so excited because I wanted to share the fact that this happened, but I found out that it was actually a staged photo. But I think it's even stranger the fact that it was staged because the person that did it was just one person, and they apparently owned all the stuffed animals, and I counted there were 30 plus stuffed animals, so that means that they brought 30 of their own stuffed animals in the Orlando heat all the way to the farthest back point you can go in the Magic Kingdom, set them up on a bridge on the ground, and took a picture of it in front of the ride, and then packed them all up and left.
You gotta appreciate the dedication.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's fair. They were certainly dedicated. I find it a little bit strange. I I find that almost weirder than people just choosing to actively leave their their personal property there as a offering to Splash Mountain.
The gods of Splash Mountain.
So then the sun sets and Splash Mountain is entering its final few hours. People start to gather at both of the bridges for the ride. So for people who don't know, Splash Mountain, big mountain, and got the 50-foot drop. They built a bridge over like where the boats drop so that the boats like go underneath of the bridge, and then they built a bridge um right where the boats like come down from the drop, so you can be above them watching the boats drop, and then you can also be where the boats come out and watch the boats drop. If does that make sense?
Yes.
Think
Sorry.
so?
It's hard to explain. I've been there. um essentially there's like a bridge where you can watch the boats who just finished dropping, and then there's a bridge where you can watch the boats drop. The logs.
Okay.
The logs drop. Sorry, they were logs. It seems around 9 p.m. is when the crowd really started to gather, and from that moment on, there were at least 100 people standing on both of those bridges applauding every single log that dropped. And that's about every 30 seconds that a log comes down that hill. And every single one was applauded from 9 p.m. to the time that the last log dropped, which is past closing time. And closing time was 11 p.m.
Whoa.
Yep. But in a Disney park, 11 p.m. doesn't mean that the ride stopped operating. That just means that you're no longer allowed to get in line for it. Yeah, so at a Disney park, you can get in line until exactly 11 p.m. and you are guaranteed to ride the ride. And this led to the most chaotic part of the night, or the day, honestly, 15 minutes before closing. Splash Mountain was starting to gather a really big crowd within the last hour because everyone wanted to be the last person to ride the ride. And when it became 15 minutes before closing, those crowds that gathered jumped into the queue, or, well, at least the kinder guests did. The other people, who were absolutely determined to be the last in line, started forming a mob right outside of the entrance to the queue. There were people everywhere. No one knew where the line began or ended. It was just clumps of people saying, "Oh, please, go ahead of me." Finally, a cast member was brave enough to enter the sea of people. Armed with only a "This is the end of the line" sign, they marched through the crowd and back towards Frontierland. People started shouting, "If you want to ride the ride, follow the sign guy." Chants and cheers then started of the crowd chanting, "Sign guy, sign guy." And as much as I love and appreciate Sign Guy, he was not strong enough to take on the crowd of Disney adults himself. He
Rest in peace, sign guy.
this is
He might not be dead. He probably just
this
needs
is
to
the
just take
story
a
that I was
break.
telling. The saga of Sign Guy is amazing. So Sign Guy, he was quickly overrun, and then not shown in either of the videos I saw. Sign Guy became a woman, so now Sign Gal is literally being sworn by what has to be over 50 people. She's essentially begging them to get in line and stay in line. But every time she takes a step backwards in order to create more space in the line, the horde of people surrounding her just stay right with her because they want to be, when that line is closed, they want to be the last person in line. And anyone who is right next to her is the last person in line. So finally, this poor woman, she has reinforcements brought in the form of managers and a security guard. They start trying to protect Sign Gal from getting trampled by these people who all want the clout of being the last person to ride Splash Mountain. Finally, at this point, we are entering the final few minutes. Sign Gal and the managers are all screaming, if you are not in line by 11 p.m., you will not ride the ride. Some guests even pulled out their phones and did a countdown to 11 p.m. And as soon as the clock struck 11, the managers, Sign Gal, the security guard, built a literal human wall around the final riders of Splash Mountain. People kept trying to get in line afterwards and push their way in, but they were all turned away. Absolutely no exceptions. The manager, Sign Gal,
Holy shit.
yeah, it was crazy. It was honestly kind of scary watching. I felt so bad for this cast member, Sign Gal. Like, I felt so bad for her. The manager, Sign Gal, and the security guard had to literally stay in this wall formation protecting the final riders until they managed to get them into the actual queue of the ride. Because at this point, they were like out over the Splash Mountain Bridge and pretty far away from like where the actual ride and the stanchions are. However, it wasn't that easy getting them to the actual queue itself, too, because some people had the bright idea of getting in line a little earlier, but standing at the entrance of the queue. They were technically in line, just letting everyone pass them so that they could be the last in line. And because of this, there was a major backup and confusion, and nobody wanted to go past them because they were all like, no, we were in line behind you. We want to be behind you. So another manager had to go and yell at them. And even then, like the manager being like, guys, you have to move. These people refused to move. And like there's like some videos where you can hear like the manager screaming at them being like, you have to go or you're not riding the ride. And they were like, whatever. And it wasn't until a security guard came over and basically said the same thing, where it was like, you're going to get kicked out and trespassed from the park and you're not going to get to ride the ride. So you either move or you leave with me. And so eventually they did move. And the ride, or the park, closed with the ride at 175-minute wait time, which
Shit.
is 2 hours and 55 minutes.
Starting at 11?
Yep.
So 2 o'clock in the morning is when it's finally all over?
Yep.
So what time is it that what's like the usual wait time for something at the end of the day?
Normally, I would say that the longest wait time towards the end of the night is normally about an hour max. And then, like, the different parks close at different hours. The Magic Kingdom normally closes at like 10 or 11, but I mean, this doesn't normally happen where people are literally arguing to be the last in line. Most of the time, especially with rides like Splash Mountain, because it has such a high rider capacity, there are no lines for it at the end of the night. But because of this special instance, it was like a 3 hour wait at 11 o'clock when the park technically closed. And if you are in line for the ride, as long as it does not break down, you are guaranteed to ride it.
I mean, it's a fair policy, but the poor
I
operator.
know. I don't even know how they managed to like scheduling. How do they do this? Like that's a whole separate shift in itself, you know? I don't know how they do it. So yeah, so with Disney parks, another thing is like they handle closing a little strangely, maybe, where it's like, yeah, the park is closed at 11 p.m. and you can't get in line for any rides anymore, but the rides are only the only true thing that actually closes at 11 p.m. You are not kicked out of the park and you're free to wander around if you so choose. All of the shops on Main Street USA stay open for at least an hour after they close. So all of the people who were not in line but around Splash Mountain were allowed to stay right there, and that's what many people did. They all gathered at the base of the hill on the bridges again and still proceeded to applaud every single log that came down the hill. This went on until about 2 o'clock in the morning. Hundreds of people cheering every 30 seconds, and it seems when the riders that got on late were finished riding, they also joined the crowd on the bridge. Once all the guests were off the ride wasn't quite finished yet. The true people who were the last to ride Splash Mountain and the ones who deserved it the most were the cast members, and if any logs deserved applause, it was theirs. It was genuinely very sweet to see the cast members so happy and enjoying one last ride on this beloved attraction to thunderous applause, and them getting the clout for being the true last people to ride Splash Mountain. It was probably like, I don't know this for sure, but I imagine that if the ride was done being operated around 2 o'clock in the morning, it would take another half an hour to an hour to get all those people out of the park just because there were so many of them. The Disney employees probably didn't get to go home until like 3 o'clock in the morning that morning.
I hope they had the next day off.
Yeah, I was about to say they better not be cloping it or anything.
Could you imagine? And yeah, but then just like that, Splash Mountain in Disney World was no more. Disneyland's closed May 31st, 2023, and it seems like it had like a similar vibe with a bunch of people showing up to pay respect, but it wasn't nearly as big of an event as Disney World's. The coolest part seemed to be that Tony Baxter came to ride the ride one last time at Disneyland's closing. It's really interesting that it turned into such a big fiasco, and I think part of that reason is definitely social media, because Disney has closed classic attractions before, and I know classic attractions must have had like diehard fans there wanting to ride it one last time and stuff like that, but never anything as big as this. And we live in a culture now where people try and record everything that they do, and they want to post about being there to experience these experiences that nobody else gets to experience. So I think that really helped get make Splash Mountain's last operating day as insane as it was. So now let's jump forward in time a little bit to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Luckily for me, while I was like starting the research and write this episode, Disney officially announced when it was opening and actually started letting people test ride the ride. Tiana's Bayou Adventure will open June 28th, 2024 in Disney World with no official opening date for Disneyland's version, but I believe it did say that it was opening later this year as of like recording this episode. And I am personally very excited to ride it. I know I mentioned earlier in the first episode talking about like what they did for the ride, like the story of this ride and how they kind of skirted around some of the more problematic areas of The Princess and the Frog was that this ride isn't based off of the movie itself. Disney has like a thing where, what are they called? They're called like storybook rides, where it's like Winnie the Pooh or Peter Pan or I don't know, Alice in Wonderland, all the different rides based off of like titular characters. Most of the time, those rides are dark rides where you are taken through different scenes of the movie and you get like a very shortened version of the movie. That's what everybody thought that this ride was going to be, but there was a couple of issues with that. One being that they didn't want their black protagonist to be a frog the entire ride, or at least a bunch of fans, most fans did not want that. And two, Disney is moving away from using any reference of voodoo anywhere in their media and in the parks, especially in the parks. So the bad guy in the movie, his name is Dr. Facilier, and he's like the voodoo guy.
It's the best song in the movie.
I wouldn't say that. I loved every song in that movie, but
Oh, they're all bops, but like I will go to bat for Friends on the Other Side.
Opposite of him, opposite of Dr. Facilier, there is Mama Odie, who they called the good voodoo queen, or like the voodoo witch or something like that in the movie. They've completely changed her title now. So instead of her being like the voodoo queen, she's now the Bayou fairy godmother. And there is no reference to Dr. Facilier or voodoo at all in this ride. So what Tiana's Bayou Adventure is it takes place after the movie. So Tiana has bought like a salt mountain, and she like owns like a little co-op where she works with different animals and people to make uh, because like at the end of the movie she gets her restaurant that she wants, like the whole movie she wants a restaurant and she gets it at the very end, and essentially she just has this like salt mountain in this co-op to help her work. You,
She's mining salt.
yeah, that's like the idea of the mountain now, is that she like the mountain is a salt mine.
So it's really Salt Mountain.
Yeah, it's Salt Mountain. But it seems like they
Hmm.
don't really reference that very much, because like you go in the log and you go through the swamp and then you see Tiana and she's like, "We're throwing a Mardi Gras party at my restaurant and we need help finding a band, like a we want to find a critter band to play at our Mardi Gras party. Can you help me and my alligator friend Lewis do that?" Because like Lewis is an alligator that plays the trumpet from the movie, and so they're like, we want animals to play at our party, not humans.
Yeah, so Alligator
As you
Mountain.
do.
Yeah, so that's essentially the alligators in the ride a ton, but
The salt thing is so boring. They should have. What? Why? Make it about the alligator. Make it about something fun. Salt is not. It's tasty, but it's not fun.
well, the Salt Mountain doesn't really have much to do with the ride anyway. Like the inside parts that were like the forest and stuff, they changed that now to be the bayou. So instead of it being like bright and colorful in there, it's now relatively dark, but they have like fireflies everywhere and they sing the song going down the bayou, and you see Tiana and Lewis like finding these critters and they're playing music, and then they're like, "Oh, but we found these critters in this band, but we still want to find more." And then Mama Odie shows up and she's like, "If you want to find more, you gotta think, be smaller. Think smaller, be smaller." I haven't ridden the ride yet. I just watched the POV. And she uses her magic to shrink you down to the size of frogs, where you end up in like this
Her not voodoo magic.
yes, not voodoo magic. You shrink,
Just regular
just
magic.
regular magic. You shrink to the size of frogs, where you find this badass frog band, which I fucking love these frogs. I would die for these frogs. I love them so much. They're so cute. They're in what was the laughing place. And you're like the size of, yeah, yeah, and the fireflies are also down there and they're dancing and stuff like that. And then like after you see them and you technically, I guess the guest asks them like, "Oh, come play at the party." Mama Odie's like, "Okay, let's get you to the party." And she is now at the base of the hill where the vultures were, and she's like, "Go up this hill, I'll make you bigger and you're gonna make a big splash." And then you like see her at the very top, and I guess she must do like some more magic and turns you back to big, and then you go down the 50-foot drop, and then the very final scene, instead of it being like the big riverboat and everybody celebrating that Brer Rabbit returned, it's all of the Princess and the Frog characters celebrating and all the critters that you saw in the bayou um throwing their party, and
All
that's
right,
the
so
ride.
I got to get into some like just geographical logic here because I said Frog Mountain last time and it tickled me and I like the idea. However, frogs don't. As you're saying this, frogs don't live on mountains, and there's a reason for this. Frogs live, yes, in bayous, but the thing about bayous is they are the opposite of mountains, which is why New Orleans floods so easily. It's because it is not on a mountain. So the word mountain and the fact that this is designed with a mountain concept in mind because you have to splash down something is the problem.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone is saying that, but I think that that is the core theming issue. I'm all about a Princess and the Frog ride. It can involve water, you can even go quickly, but you can't call anything a mountain.
No, well, and they don't call it a mountain. It's called Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
But it was a mountain, and there's still mountain esque activities going on.
I do agree with that. It so apparently people there's been a lot of criticism with the ride, and I would want to reserve most judgment for actually riding it, because it's so dark inside of the bayou parts that like the POV rides can't really capture what you're actually seeing in there. So it doesn't really seem like a lot, but I do see a lot of people like online that seem relatively unbiased being like, "Oh, this ride is great. This ride's really fun." Like my good pal Dreamfinder guy from the Buzzy episode, he was like, "Yeah, I actually thought it was a really cute ride." And he's actually seems pretty judgmental when it comes to different Disney rides. Like he's very like, "This is what it should be and this is what it's like." And I respect that. And he was even like, "Oh, this ride's great." But then you on the other hand, you have the Safe Splash Mountainers that are not giving the ride a chance at all and just hate it. Like I joined a I joined a Facebook group, one of their Facebook groups. I wouldn't say joined, I infiltrated it. And these these people need to learn how to grow up. I they just cannot let go of the fact that this ride has changed. I'm not saying that they have to love the ride or that they even have to like it, but the things that people are saying about it is just crazy to me. But that doesn't mean that there isn't room for criticism of the ride either, because I agree with you. I feel like there isn't really a story to it at all. And I feel like that the Imagineers really struggled with figuring out how to fit this this story or fit a story into this ride track that was made specifically for the Song of the South. I mean, Brer Rabbit stories.
Yeah, it's like a jukebox musical. You're trying to figure out what story fits the music of ABBA, and you're like, yeah, this is close enough.
Yeah, she has three dads. And
Yeah, whatever.
yeah.
Screw it. Nobody's Swedish, but who cares? The
Yes.
that's, I mean, yeah, it's the hauntingness of the mountain. The mountain is the ghost, I think, that haunts the whole ride and doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I can agree with that. I like I said, I would like to ride it. Like I feel like the Bayou parts would actually probably look really cool in person. And then Princess and the Frog songs are really good. So like it would be nice to hear those songs as you're going through it. And the ride itself is a fun ride. Like it's the same exact track layout, but yeah, but it doesn't have a necessarily coherent story. And I feel like it would have been cool to do a story book ride for Princess and the Frog like this, because the whole bayou part in the middle, like them going, you go up the hill to get to like the top or the middle part of the mountain, and that could be Dr. Facilier like turning the prince into a frog, and you see Princess Tiana and Naveen, and like he accidentally turns her into a frog, and then you're in the bayou and it's them going down the bayou, and then they go through the roller coaster dip, and that's where they meet Mama Odie, and then Mama Odie like teaches them that like they just need to learn how to love themselves. It doesn't matter that you're a frog. I think was sort of one of the messages of the movie. And then like everybody too was also saying, because at the very end of Dr. Facilier's song is like a bunch of the his like friends from the other side, I don't know what you would call them, spirits, start like chanting "Are you ready?" And I think it would have been really fun as you're going up the hill to have like these creepy guys like chanting "Are you ready?" And then you like go down the hill and you get away from him maybe. I feel like it.
But this presumes that Disney likes its own movie, and the ride, I think, is like when you have a child to put your relationship back together. That's too much weight on the child. That poor kid is never going to be able to hold your fractured, shitty relationship together. I mean, that's what this ride feels like to me. Like you're asking the ride to solve the mistakes in the movie,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because she's not a frog, so we got
She's
rid of
not a
that. The
frog, and
voodoo
they.
has been
Yeah.
excised, but the voodoo's still there. And I feel bad for Disney about the voodoo. Like they just wandered into a notoriously difficult topic there. Pop culture has always struggled with voodoo. It loves it. It's obsessed with it. It wishes it could play with it. But the truth about voodoo is, like, Zora Neale Hurston, very famous Harlem Renaissance black author, goes down to New Orleans, goes down to, originally writes this book of Mules and Men. She writes about Florida labor camps, lumber camps, sorry, not labor camps, lumber camps. And she, gets in with all these, like, the Southern black culture. And then she goes to New Orleans and she writes this portion about voodoo. And afterwards, people are like, you didn't really get it. she's a
Really?
black woman, right? In the culture. But that's because voodoo and hoodoo are notoriously secretive about their own systems and practices. To truly know voodoo, and I'm not one who speaks as a person who does, you really have to be very deeply integrated into the culture. So no matter what you do, when you try to represent it, you are going to be, to a certain extent, wrong. So the best course of action for a large, mostly white corporation is to not even broach the topic,
Yeah. Which is
or
what they
to do
tried
it
to
in a
do
way.
with the ride, not the movie
Right,
itself.
but too late.
Yeah.
It's again, it's the child that's trying to hold the relationship together. Disney is afraid that black people want to divorce it. So they try to give them a ride where they, fixed the mistakes they made in the movie that was supposed to patch up their relationship in the first place. This is the second kid.
Yeah. And then on top of that,
It's tough.
yeah. No, it is. And then it's always going to have like the ghost of like Splash Mountain there because like people are still going to call it
Right.
Splash Mountain. And I know for me, when I'm riding it, I'm sure I'll be thinking, oh, this is the part where Brer Rabbit did this in Splash Mountain. Like, and I,
Racial politics and black racial politics in the US are some of the most complex aspects of what it means to be an American, and thorniest and troubling. Disney needed something clean and pure and new to even come near this subject, but it took something that was already kind of a problem and put it on top of something that was a much larger problem.
So what you're saying is they should have used Tom Hanks'
yeah.
splash.
Yes, well, yes. But I mean, do we have when you hear that, Savannah, like if you were Disney and you invited Dr. Rob for some reason to comment on, oh, we got to do something about Splash Mountain, we're thinking of Princess and the Frog, and I say this to you, can you think of a Disney property that is nice and clean that addresses African American culture? It doesn't have the baggage of Princess and the Frog, because the Princess and the Frog was a noble effort, but it was a first try, so they were gonna screw some things up.
No. I mean,
There hasn't been anything newer about black people.
no.
Oh Lord, that makes
Soul?
it even worse.
Soul?
Oh Soul,
But
yeah,
Soul they
Soul, you're
screwed
right.
over because they like well, I mean, I guess I think it came out during COVID or it like came out right before
It's
COVID.
John Batiste, right?
No. It
Didn't he
was
write the music for that?
oh, I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry. I thought you meant like they were an actor. I don't know the name of that person. Um who was the guy who played the guy in Soul? Jamie Foxx.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it was Jamie
That
Foxx.
was a really good movie, but it also that would not fit anywhere. Like that wouldn't fit as a water ride at all.
Yeah, that's
And also, like I
less
said,
Splash Mountain-y.
yeah, and Disney screwed it over because like they just released it on Disney Plus, so like it made like no money, and like Disney uses that as like a look, it made no money, but that's because you didn't release it in theaters, and it was like it's a whole issue that's been going on, especially with Pixar
Mm.
because it is a Pixar movie too. So it's it's very complicated. And I was reading, I think it was the New York Times article that said it. The article is called Black Disney Princess Ride Replaces Splash Mountain and Its Racist History. I found it really interesting because they mentioned that in a study done by Disney World, Tiana was was a second place favorite among black viewers. Their favorite characters were characters from The Lion King.
Oh damn, that would have been okay.
A Lion King version? I feel like that could have been cool.
That's a fascinating thought that Disney got it right when they adapted an actual African story and just avoided all the complexities of African America.
Yeah. And I found that very fascinating that like animals were more liked than Tiana. But I mean, and I know it is like an African story and stuff like that, so it totally makes sense. But I was like, because when I read that, they didn't say who was the more liked character, and I was like, who would beat Tiana? Like who? I don't understand because Tiana's a really great character too. Like I genuinely really really like her. But yeah, but the Lion King characters are also like The Lion King is one of the best movies that Disney has ever made. I guess part of it,
Yes, that's part of
Oh
that
yeah.
renaissance.
yeah. I guess part of it would be that it's like I feel like The Lion King could fit there, and I feel like a lot of people would like it, but also it doesn't make much sense for it to be a water ride. It
It's also a profoundly white movie in terms of the actors and Elton John.
Yes. Yes, that was another thing that I was
Yeah.
thinking too. But then, oh god, and then I I hate the remake of the live action Lion King. I hate it.
Don't
I
speak of
know.
that. Don't speak of it.
They took everything
Well,
that was good about the movie and just ruined it horribly.
I do find it hilarious that they cast John Oliver as the toucan.
We did, and I like John Oliver, but it wasn't great. It was not good, like in the slightest.
so
But
the moral of the story is, if Disney wants to do something with African American culture, it doesn't have anywhere to go but The Princess and the Frog. That is the best they've got. And
it's one of their most
it's a
popular, at least.
but even it is imperfect, and they wanted the ride to fix the imperfections. The ride just had too much to do,
Yeah,
or has too much to do.
and
It's carrying too much baggage.
yeah, and like you said, like they needed a safe, clean story for it. They sort of tried to do that with this ride by not really giving it a story at all. Instead of there being any tension or anything like that, you are just traveling down the bayou watching these little critters sing.
It's
Yeah.
more about the
Yeah, it
vibes
really
now
is.
than any
It
sort of
seems like it's
story.
a vibe ride instead of it actually being like a dark ride. So it is really interesting. I, I'm not going to be upset with anybody for not liking the ride, but these Save Splash Mountain people need to they need to grow up. It is some of the things that I've seen on Facebook are unreal.
Yeah, so let's hear what our complaints, I'm guessing, about the complexities of racial politics and the mountainness. Is that part of any of this? I mean, we're talking about the history of Splash Mountain ghosting the thing and the fact that geographically bayous and mountains are very distinct. We're also talking about the fact that Disney has very complicated racial politics that one ride can't resolve.
No, that's not really what these people are arguing about. It's more
Okay.
just like here's one from anonymous participant. Is there proof that Splash Mountain had any revamp whatsoever? One excuse was it kept breaking down, but it looks like it still is. It literally looks like they just shut down the ride, stripped it of the expensive and nice animatronics, ran to a thrift shop to get fake plants for 25 cents, threw everything together for a tiny budget.
So that it seems cheap is what they're saying.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying it seems cheap. They're like, this one is one of my favorites where it's like it's a picture of a 2D cutout of Brer Rabbit that was in like the gift shop as you left, and it says just this 2D cutout of Brer Rabbit in the Briar Patch store has more soul and is more enjoyable to look at than 90% of Tiana's.
But like the ride isn't open to the public yet, is it?
Yeah, but like cast members and annual pass holders are getting previews, so there are people riding it at the moment. And that's
Okay.
another thing too with this is like people, the ride keeps breaking down, and but it's in its testing phase, so like I'm giving Disney slack on that. But these Splash Mountain people are like, oh, see, it's an omen. This is a bad ride. It's a bad ride, and it's just like Jesus Christ, shut the fuck up, please.
And a YouTube video is not going to capture well what it's like to be on the ride. That's like watching Broadway on TV or something. It's just not what it's
Exactly.
about.
Exactly. Like you put on a POV of any Disney ride and it's not going to be nearly as good as experiencing whether or not the ride is good in itself. Like it's just not the same thing. These effects are meant to be seen in person.
So how could you say about the plastic plants and stuff? Like, how do you know unless you're physically there?
And also people are just being bad faith nitpicky because they just want to hate the ride. This one, I love this little review. I think it's so silly. It says same as before, but now there's nobody to say howdy to you.
That was
My friend's
it's
review of
important.
Bayou Adventure. No one to say
Hmm.
howdy to you.
Too bad.
And like these people are writing like literal like novels about how much they hate this ride. And people are ready to like be like, I don't want anything to do with Disney anymore. And I'll be honest, I think the outside of the ride looks beautiful. Like they put all this different foliage on it. They made it look like a swamp, but like in this nice way. Like there's these like really cool trees and there's lily pads everywhere, and then they got little frogs hiding everywhere, and then at night it like lights up and it looks super cool. Like I personally think, I don't think the ride, and like I said, I haven't ridden it yet. I'm hoping to ride it later this year, but I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. But I feel like there is criticism to be had of it. I feel like, but that's safe to say of anything, I guess.
Well, I mean, I guess to say the beating a dead horse, but the ride is just carrying so much tricky, thorny, complicated weight in terms of America's racial sins that it's going to be easier to find fault than on Space Mountain or Buzz Lightyear's, I don't know, laser gun adventure.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing to say is like, whether you like Tiana's or not, the Imagineers had huge shoes to fill and to erase and stomp and completely make you forget about, I guess, in the same way. And I don't envy them. And I'm excited to ride the ride and to form my own personal opinion of it later.
I would have given it to the Country Bears and done a Princess and the Frog thing somewhere else.
I can get down with that.
The whole mountain
Yeah.
to the bears?
Damn, yeah.
The whole mountain to the
Give them
bears.
to the Bears. I'm not entirely kidding that I would have taken Splash. Like if it were me, if I were
Oh,
whoever's in charge of this.
sorry, I
Your
just dropped my
mic just
phone. No,
dropped.
I dropped my
Oh.
phone.
I would have taken Splash Mountain, left the whole racial issue out of it entirely, just scrubbed it clean, put in some IP that is already part of the Frontierland experience, and then created a good ride around something like Princess and the Frog that gives the African American visitor a feeling like they belong, like they're represented.
Yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, it would have been kind of nice to see Disney Imagineers like come up with their own story to put into Splash Mountain, because that's a big complaint that a lot of Disney Parks fans have nowadays, is that Disney is just putting IPs into the park and not making any new rides. But part of what attracted people to Disneyland and Disney World in the first place was these rides that you couldn't ride anywhere else. And like the Haunted Mansion,
Yeah.
Pirates of the Caribbean, and those both spawned movies to some success for the Haunted Mansion, but to major success for Pirates of the Caribbean. Like it feels like Disney's afraid to take risk, and it feels like Tiana's Bayou Adventure is not a risk to them, is I guess what they were thinking. The story isn't very much a risk. They knew that people would be happy that Tiana was getting a ride. Now, like you said, it does have all that other stuff lying underneath of it and everything, but they're also not taking a risk with using popular IP as well.
Yeah, there's a world where I mean, you're right. There's a world where they could have left Tiana to the side or given her her own ride and created a ride with black characters that were just brand new.
Yeah. And I feel like that would have
Why
been
not?
awesome. They could have fit it in the Frontierland somehow. Like it, yeah. Because like that's another complaint that a lot of people have that I feel like is relatively fair, but I also feel like it's a little nitpicky, is that they're like, the bayou doesn't fit in the Frontierland, and I'm like, I get it, but like, who cares?
It's really close enough.
Yeah,
It's the South, right?
Yeah.
I guess. Well, I guess, but yeah, I was just like, let them put the ride there. I'm happy that Tiana is getting a ride. The main problem I had with the ride is that Prince Naveen is only in it at the very, very end, and he doesn't get a single line. And I'm like, what the hell? What?
That's
I know
balls.
Naveen never gets any merchandise or like anywhere. He's never featured anywhere, and I don't know why, and it makes me sad because I love him. He's the prince.
You heard it here,
So,
folks.
well, yeah. So,
Savannah's one complaint.
yeah. But oh my god, I have to send you the frog. But yes, do you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
I'll leave it to Mims. I've had too many thoughts.
I apparently need to watch Tom Hanks's Splash.
Yes, you do.
We
And I believe there's sequels and all kinds of stuff.
really?
Oh no, I'm only watching the Tom
Now,
Hanks one.
I'm pretty sure there's a Splash 2, and there's like TV shows that are inspired by the concept. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you for riding along with us. Please watch your step as you exit and remember to take all personal belongings with you. And right now, before we stop recording, too, Rob, I want you guys to look at the frog I sent you, and I want to get your
Oh.
responses to him on recording video.
Oh, he's just a jolly little guy.
Love him so much.
Like, I would hang out with that frog.
And he's playing the bongos.
Of course he is.
I think he has a name, but I don't know his name at the moment. But I like him a lot.
This looks like a perfectly fine Disney experience. Like, just from the frog, this looks like of the quality.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looks like it's going to be. It's not gonna be like an affront to the park or anything.
No, it definitely isn't. I guess people were just hoping for another like groundbreaking ride, but like it couldn't be because it had too much to do. I also like this picture where it's like your music saved me and it's a picture of the frog playing the bongos. But yeah. Thank you guys for sitting here for 2 hours with me about talking about this.